All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are going to be going through a presentation of conquering the GMAT, as well as a short presentation on Hult International Business School and the programs that we offer. My name is Nemis, and I am the Director of Enrollment for the MBA, the Executive MBA, our Hybrid MBA, and our live online MBA programs. And I am here to tell you a little bit about Hult in general, what we offer here. And then after that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Sergey Cook. Sergey works for GMAT Master. He is a senior instructor at GMAT Master, and they are going to help you with tips and tricks on how to beat the GMAT and also some application support advice as well. And we will definitely have a Q&A session at the end, so an opportunity for everyone to ask questions if you have any. And then we will also be sending a video of this presentation out to all attendees and all registrants. So I'd like to welcome you this evening and thank you for taking the time. So just to start off with Hult, Hult offers students more than just a degree. It is a global school that takes you beyond the world of business, which is really important in today's environment. Our curriculum focuses on core subjects in business, and it really focuses on three main things: the world, the future, and you as a candidate. A little bit about Hult. You know, Hult is more a little bit of Hult's history is we've been around for a while. The school was founded in 1964. It has since changed through the times, and we are now a school that is about the future and about being the most relevant business degree. We want to make sure that we impart skills on our students that will be viable not only now but also in the future, which makes us stand out and not be like any other business school. Now, with regards to why we exist at Hult, the world is changing, but business schools are not. And this is why we believe that with the transformations that we're seeing and every change around us, it calls for something new, a different type of business school for a different type of career. You'll need the instincts of an entrepreneur, and you'll also need a vision that transcends borders. You'll need to learn by doing, and you're going to need more than the status quo. Because your time is irreplaceable and your ideas can change everything, this is why we exist. This is why we are different. Hult is a new kind of business school for the global generation. We are the first triple accredited business school, accredited by the international business accrediting bodies, AACSB, AMBER, and Aqueous. We are the only school in the US to achieve what is known as the Triple Crown. And it is a accreditation award and achievement that is held by only 1% of the world's business schools. We have also won the AMBER Association of MBA's Innovation Award because of the pedagogy that we use at Hult and our approach to delivering business education. And we will cover a little bit more of this in the actual presentation. This is your year at a glance at Hult. You have your fall semester. So your foundational knowledge is built through business core courses, which you will be taking through the fall, as well as the winter and the spring. These are tailored in such a way that it will enable you to master each degree, so each subject to a degree of being a master at it. Okay, so what you go through in terms of the core curriculum is going to help you learn about leading the world, the future, as well as improving yourself. And things that you can do in your core curriculum are things like personal impact, leading change, leading globally, financial management, operations management, project management, marketing, finance, decisions and data, global strategy, just to name a few. Once you've gone through the core curriculum, you'll come to a capstone challenge. A big thing that we do at Hult is experiential learning. We just believe that learning by doing is a better way to learn. And with your capstone challenge, you'll be asked to identify an existing technology and use that technology to either disrupt an existing industry or come up with a new product or service. And we'll touch about that a little bit later. Finally, you come to the mastery phase of your program, which is the summer, where you have the opportunity to rotate through all 6 different campuses that Hult offers, or you can do an internship, which is highly encouraged. During this period, you will choose electives and tailor your academic journey to what you need to do for your career and the next step. To touch again on the award that we won, as well as the pedagogy, which I keep referring to, we put theory into practice at Hult. You can't just learn business by sitting in a classroom. That's why Hult gives you the opportunity to apply these things in the real world, so that when you graduate, you will graduate and be able to immediately implement your acquired skill set and see what the practical implementation of that looks like. So we do this through challenge learning. Challenge learning is ongoing case study. So while you're going through the theory in the class, we're giving you an opportunity to see what that theory looks like in practice through a case study, so that you can start visualizing what it looks like to apply your skill set. Then we come to our simulations. This is probably one of the most fun parts of the program. Business simulations are run over long weekends where you are tasked by a professor in a group setting of 5 to 6 individuals to come up with a product or in a specific industry, and you literally build the entire product lifeline of a good or a service, and you see it all the way through, competing against other teams at Hult. Every day we post the results of who has the most market share, most revenue share and such, and we also post the team strategies. So this is what happens in the real world: is you have competitors who are going to look at what you're doing, and they are going to try and use that knowledge to offer something better and circumvent you, or possibly even leapfrog you. And so you always need to be ready and on your toes. This finally comes to the Hult Future Challenge, which I spoke about. Again, in a consultative approach, in a consulting project for 6 weeks, we're asking you to identify this technology, disrupt an industry, or come with a good service. We're not really interested in you coming up with a great business plan or a business case. We literally want to see that you could actually go to the market if you wanted to, you and your team in a group setting. We want to make sure that you have this opportunity in this environment to use and practice these skill sets that you've acquired from the program, so that you are job ready from day one when you graduate from the program. And that helps you become the most desirable student in the marketplace when you graduate. More things that we do is we teach you about mindsets, as well as give you core skills and personal skills. This is very important to make you a well-rounded candidate once you graduate. It's not enough to just have the skill sets. You have to have an array of tools that are required by the marketplace for you to be the most outstanding candidate and thus get the opportunities post-graduation. Another thing that we do to make you the most attractive candidate to hiring managers is we offer a dual degree program. Now, the Hult dual degree program, you get to earn an MBA or a Master of Business International Business program, or an EMBA, and in an additional 6 months, you get to add on a second degree. So in less than 2 years, you are graduating with not 1, but 2 degrees. I'm sure if most of you recall, it was enough to have a bachelor's degree 20 years ago, and enough to have a master's degree about 5 years ago. The marketplace has become so competitive that you need to add skills and tools to your resume to make yourself stand out and be the most attractive candidate. And with your dual degree on your MBA or your Master of International Business degree, you can add on the Master of International Marketing, the Master of Finance, or the Master of Business Analytics degree. At Hult, you will learn from faculty with real business experience. This is one of the things that we pride ourselves in. We want you to learn from those who are living it and doing it currently, bringing you real life examples current to what today's needs are and looking into the future. Over 80% of our graduates are happy with our professors. Our professors have lived in at least an average of 3 to 4 different countries, and they come from over 45 different countries. Again, being international is not only represented by our locations or our student body, but also in our faculty. When it comes to going back to school, you're doing this for your career. And so career development and coaching support are very, very important. So during the expert career and coaching and personal support journey, we actually start working with you 3 months before the program starts. And the idea behind this is we want you to be ready to hit the ground running as soon as you come into the program. A year goes by really quickly, And this is a huge focus for us. We invest a lot in you because ultimately this is why you are coming into the program, is to see a return on your investment through the development of your career. You'll learn from and you'll hear from a lot of prospective employers. You'll get to build a truly international network, one that really transcends borders. We have a lot of boot camp series that we run and a lot of advisory programs that we run. We want to make sure that we provide you with the resources for you to really gain market knowledge, the practical skills for you to be able to take advantage of what is out there, and the confidence to be able to present yourself and then be able to secure those opportunities that exist in the market. We then have our global rotation. So at Hult, you have the opportunity of studying in up to 6 different locations should you choose to do so. We have 4 home campuses, which is what we refer to as home campuses, in San Francisco, Boston, London, and Dubai. At Hult, you choose one of those campuses to be your home campus, and you would spend the first 7 months of your time during the core curriculum at Hult. We don't allow anybody to move around during this stage. It is the most rigorous part of the course, and we want to make sure that we're setting you up for success, and thus no rotation is allowed. We then have 2 rotation centers, which this comes in the last 4 months of the program, one in New York and another in Shanghai. In that last 4 months of the program, you have the opportunity, if you wanted to do so, you literally could actually rotate to all 6 campuses, but logistically that could be a little bit of a nightmare. So typically what you'll see is students will travel to at least one other campus in that 4-month period, taking electives. That is the mastery phase of the program. At this stage, a student will be used to the rigor of the program, and thus we are comfortable that you'll be able to get through the program in a satisfactory manner while rotating. This gives you an opportunity to build your network beyond your region, beyond your locale, and learn the nuance of doing business in a different region. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for you to experience other cultures while getting your graduate business degree. The Hult student. So Hult is truly a multicultural and dynamic community. As you can see, we have over 145 nationalities represented in the student body. We are over 90% international, over 100 languages spoken. It truly is like the mini United Nations. It is an incredible melting pot of all hues and all nationalities. Again, a theme that recurs through and through Hult. We are not only international by name, we are international by location. It is represented in our student body as well as in our faculty. And as you can see there, our MBAs have an average number of 7 years of work experience versus our master students with 1, and the average ages being 24 and 31 respectively. This is Hult right here. Now, if you picture yourself in this crowd, then Hult is the right place for you. That literally is a representation. That is a cohort of one of our master's degrees programs at Hult. And yeah, that is all I have for you this evening. And I will obviously be available at the end of Sergey's presentation to answer any questions that you might have. But in the meantime, if you want to take a screenshot of this, do join us, connect with us. We have a lot of webinar series that we run, and we'll be more than happy to have you and host you at those. All right, thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Sergey.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nemas. Thank you for this introduction. Congratulations, everybody, for joining us here tonight to learn more about the Hult program and about the GMAT. We have a lot of our students who have gone on to study for either in the MBA or the master's programs at Hult. Some of them have ended up in some really unusual for them places. Some of them moved countries, some of them moved continents. In fact, one of our students who then went on to study in the Dubai campus, then stayed in Dubai, established herself there, worked for some really amazing company. In fact, there was an article about our company in one of the MBA guides, one of the magazines, and this student was actually featured in that article. And the idea was that how transformational was the experience going and doing an international MBA degree somewhere that's not your home country and really getting outside of your comfort zone. But of course, we now have a luxury of either doing it in your home country, if you all get it in the United States, or going somewhere else. Well, one of the hurdles, let's just say, is of course the GMAT exam. So maybe you could just throw things in the chat box. I'll see what you're putting in there. Who's already been studying for the GMAT? How much do you already know about the GMAT? All right, so you could just maybe just put a little letter or just give me a little bit of an idea just so I know where are you guys coming from, so we can tailor this presentation a little bit. And you can also see on my screen, this is my contact information if you'd like to chat with me afterwards. And I understand that tomorrow you also go to get an email and my contact information will be there as well. Okay, so I see some of you have already been studying. Okay, so that's great. All right, some of you studied actually a lot, now started to understand some of the formats. Great, been studying on and off. All right, oh, that's great. So most of you have already been studying to a degree. Well, this is great. Then what we're going to do now is, okay, yeah, I've been studying, some schools are waiving the GMAT requirement. Yeah, okay, so we'll actually talk about waiving the GMAT requirements as well. And we'll talk about why some people still choose to do the GMAT, even though some of the schools might be waiving it. And what kinds of things you might possibly get from the GMAT. So we'll talk about this later so that you can decide what's right for you. I'm obviously not here to say what's right for you. I'm just going to help you ask the right questions. And also, of course, I want to show you some of the GMAT strategies. So since most of you have already been studying, what we're going to do now is probably not going to take you way outside of your comfort zone because you've already seen some of the GMAT questions. If this is the first time you've seen the GMAT, then this might feel a little uncomfortable what we're going to do next. We're going to take a look at a couple of GMAT questions. But if you do feel uncomfortable, I just want to remind you that outside of your comfort zone, there's learning zone. So if you feel like, wow, geez, I don't even know how to approach these questions, or it's been a while since I've done that, that just means you are expanding your learning. That's the whole idea of an MBA program. And that's actually also the whole idea behind the GMAT is to get you used to getting back to school. That's why a lot of the schools are still requiring the GMAT or preferring that you take the GMAT because it shows to them that you are ready to go back to this academic experience. Now, you might have an amazing work experience, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to succeed in a school, right? And we'll talk about this in a moment. So let's take a look at a question. Now, I'm going to do a couple of questions. The first question is going to be a verbal reasoning question, and then a little bit later on, we're going to take a look at the quantitative reasoning section. I'll let you judge whether these questions are easy or hard, but I wanted to show you this first question. This is a critical reasoning question from one of the past exams. I'm going to give you about a minute to think about this question, and then we'll do a few things with this question. All right, I see that some of you are saying you are not seeing my screen. Okay, let me go back then and let me make sure that you are seeing the screen. Okay, how about now? Can you see my screen now? Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, so this was my contact information. And since some of you haven't seen the screen, so I'm going to just show this to you really quickly. I will post my contact information later on as well. And here's the question that we're going to look at. So I'll give you about a minute to take a look at this question. Okay, so this has been about a minute, and perhaps I won't really ask you a question whether you can answer this question. Maybe I'm going to ask you a simpler question. How many times did you read this passage in this 1 minute? Okay, all right. Most of you read it twice. Some of you read it 3 times, or you read it once. All right, and just honestly, I'm not going to judge. There are no right and wrong answers. Can you honestly say that after reading it 2 or 3 times, you completely understand everything in this question? No. Okay. All right. Thanks for being honest. Some of you are saying yes. Most of you are saying no. Well, let's see. This is a multiple choice exam. So maybe once I show you the answer choices, things are going to be a lot clearer. So let me show you the answer choices. We've read the passage, we've read the question. So now you should be able to answer this question. So I'll show you 5 answer choices. Please choose the one that looks the best to you. And once you think you know what the right answer is, just please put it in the chat box. And we'll talk about this question, and we'll talk exactly how to do this question later on. So once you think you know what the right answer is, just please put it in the chat box. All right, so far most people are for A, and the close second is E. We also have some people for D. All right, well, let's take a look at this question. Let's see if we actually got this right. Let's go back to the passage. Now, you would notice that this passage is an argument. Critical reasoning is all about arguments. And it's the argument made by an ethicist. So who's an ethicist? In case you've never met a person by this profession, there is actually a profession of ethicist. This is essentially a philosopher who studies ethics. And to be honest with you, we don't really need to understand that for the question, but it's helpful to understand. So this passage is about ethics. Now, let me ask you a question. How much do you need to know about ethics if you're trying to get into a business school? You have to know a lot, a little, or nothing. Okay, yeah, some of you are saying nothing. Okay, good. So if you're thinking about this, we have to be ethical when we're getting into a business school, but we don't, yeah, exactly. You have to be an ethical leader, but you don't have to be an expert in ethics. You don't have to be certainly a sort of an expert that this person would be, who is a philosopher who's studying ethics. So perhaps this question isn't really about ethics. And perhaps all of these words that were really confusing as we were reading this passage are not that important. What is important is for us to understand what exactly is the question asking, and then just focusing on answering that question. So let's see, what is this question asking? The statement above in boldface plays which of the following roles? Notice how there's no question about ethics, there's a question about the role of a statement in bold. Call the boldface question just in case you've already been studying for the GMAT. So if we want to understand the role of a statement, we need to understand how this statement is related to other statements in the passage, and more specifically, how it is related to the main point of the passage. Okay, well, let's see then what kinds of keywords are going to help us understand that structure. This is actually as much as we need to understand. And notice how all of these words are actually very simple. There's nothing about ethics. The author begins by saying it would be a mistake, which means that somebody said a mistake. That is what we call a main point or a main opinion of an argument. Then, of course, if the author is disagreeing with someone or saying that somebody is wrong, then this person has to say, the ethicist, why he or she believes that these people are wrong. So that why is going to be what we call an evidence to an argument. So if the claim or the main point came first, which was in the first part of the sentence, then the evidence is going to come next. And our bolded part is exactly our evidence. Now, there are different ways to use evidence, and very often with bold-faced questions, the GMAT will actually ask us to explain how the evidence is used. It may or may not be important here, but I think it is important to see the words for although it is true that, and then there is some sort of an ethical jargon. So what this means is that the author is using this statement in order to prove his or her opinion. However, the way he or she is using it is he's agreeing with this statement, but disagreeing with people's reasoning, right? And how we can determine this, because he or she is saying it would be a mistake, and yet he's saying this is true. All right, so notice how we said nothing about ethics, but we broke down the structure. We start with a claim, then there was an evidence the author agreed with. Let's see if this is going to help us answer the question. There are 5 answer choices, and some people started from C. C is actually the most popular answer here, so I'd like to start with C just for demonstration purposes. We can start with anything. So C says that part in bold is a faulty claim. Well, I think we understand by now that it's not faulty because the author said, although this is true, there was a faulty claim before it made by some other people, but it wasn't the part in bold. The question was about the statement in bold. So C is not the correct answer. Some people think C stands for correct, but actually in this case, it's not. D, according to the argument, the commonly held opinion, that is nevertheless, oh wait, false. Well, it's not false, so we said the author said it's true, so D is out as well. How about E? It reports an observation that the argument claims is false. All right, I think we can stop here and just eliminate E because, again, it's true, not false. Well, now we're down to 2 answer choices. And most of the people here actually voted for A. Let's see if A is the right answer. If it's right, we're going to just choose it and move on to the next question. If it's wrong, we are also done, because if A is wrong, then the only answer choice that still works has to be B, so we don't even need to read it. Well, let's take a look at A. A says, the part in bold is a claim for which the argument attempts to provide justification. Well, what do you think? There definitely was a claim in the argument. It just wasn't the bolded part. It was before the bolded part. It was when the author was saying, these people are wrong. That was the claim. Not for although this is true, which is what the question is really about. So for that reason, A is wrong, B is right. And if we do this quickly without actually explaining every step, just like what I'm doing right now, you could do this question literally in under a minute. And just in case you're wondering, that is a question that is well in the 700 level. Notice how, if we know what we're doing, which is really what the GMAT's all about, is knowing how to approach the questions, then questions can become easy. If we have the right strategies and we focus on the right things that are going to help us answer this question, as opposed to what everybody's focusing, which is trying to understand what does it mean, encouraged to do otherwise. I can't even remember this. It's not that important. And that brings us to a very important point about the GMAT, is what really separates people who do very well in the GMAT from people who don't. Let's just say what separates the 500 scores and the 700 scores, because it's not as easy to get a 500 score, believe it or not, but it's much easier, of course, than get a score of 700. I'm going to show you some statistics. So what really separates these scores? And in fact, I don't want to give you my opinion. I'd like to share with you the opinion of people who create this test. These are people who actually write GMAT questions, people who work for the GMAC, the Graduate Management Admission Council. Here's what they're going to say. And by the way, this quote is from the official guide. Just most people never pay attention to that quote. It says, rather than testing your knowledge of business or any other subject matter. Now, I think this is important because what the GMAT is saying is that unlike most of the other exams that we have done in our lifetimes, we are not going to test on the GMAT how well you know ethics or philosophy, or believe it or not, even math. The GMAT is going to test how well we can reason, because the reasoning skills, and generally the skills tested on the GMAT, it's not just the reasoning skills, it's attention to detail, for example, it's time management, it's decision making. All of these skills are really important if you want to become a CEO. That's why, by the way, when you come to our class, in the very first class in our 6-week program, we're actually going to talk about the concept that we call Think Like a CEO, which is a series of skills, and time management and decision making are among them, that if you develop these skills through studying for the GMAT, you're actually going to be much more successful in that CEO job, and of course in the business school as well. Right? So the GMAT is essentially preparing you for the success in your future steps in your career growth, because it's teaching you the right skills, not necessarily the formulas or the area of the triangle. That's not going to be super helpful in a business school, but managing your time well is going to be super helpful. Right? So that's really what the test is about. So somebody who takes the time to develop the skills are going to do very well on the GMAT. Somebody who simply learns the formulas will probably do average or maybe below average. So why do most people then just learn the formulas? Why doesn't everybody learn these higher order reasoning skills? That is because at some point in our lives, we have been told, and usually it was by our high school teachers, that knowledge is power. So if you learn this physics or this chemistry or this biology, then you are going to be very successful in life as long as you get an A in school. Right? I don't know about you, but I don't actually remember a lot from my high school. So knowledge isn't really power. And I want to give you just another example. If you want to learn, let's say, how to swim, if you want to master that skill, well, learning simply the theory of swimming is probably going to be way less useful than jumping into a pool and swimming. Hopefully with somebody who knows how to swim. Well, it would be perfect if we were to swim with this person, but at least with a good coach who can show us how to swim and then give us some feedback. So that's really what it's all about. It's going to be about developing the skill, about jumping into a pool, actually doing the questions, and learning how to reason through the questions this way, how to manage your time well, and so on. So for the next, oh, thank you. Thank you. So for the next, half an hour or so, I'm your coach, and then we can continue to work together, or if you already have a coach, that's great. So I just wanted to show you, just maybe as a way of introduction, my score report, just so that you know everything's legit. I've been teaching the GMAT now for about 10 years. I do have my MBA as well. I had a fairly successful corporate career, and then I started teaching part-time, and I eventually started teaching the GMAT full-time. And it was really interesting to me because to me, getting a score of 750, which was the top 1% on the GMAT, was actually very easy. I literally just did very little preparation. I walked into the test and I got that score. And at that time, I didn't really understand what that means or how hard was it to get that score. I just realized, well, it's a top 1%, so that sounds really cool. And then a few years later, as I started meeting other people who also did exceptionally well, I started getting really curious. What really makes people succeed on the GMAT quickly, while a lot of other people really struggle on the GMAT? I've met people literally who studied for years and couldn't even break the 400 level. And what I realized, and I started actually seeking people, and that's how I met a lot of the people who I'm working with right now. One of our instructors, for example, used to work for, at that time, that was about 10 years ago, the largest GMAT prep company in the world. I don't believe it is anymore, but it was at that time. And he was named the #1 instructor in the world. Our other instructor who then came to work for us was the person who wrote for another company that was actually later acquired by Amazon. And a lot of their books are sold on Amazon. He actually wrote a lot of their books. So I started looking for these people and met with them, started networking, and started getting really curious. How do people actually learn how to study for the GMAT? And what I realized is most of the GMAT prep programs teach the theory. Some of them teach good strategies, but all of them at that time stopped short of teaching people how to think, really teaching people the skills, the process. It was more about just a lecture, just maybe here's the strategy, repeat after me, and then go home and hope that you're successful. And so that's why we put together a program about 10 years ago, which was all about developing the skills. That's why our program is about twice as long, twice as more intensive as the majority of the other program, and it includes a lot of personal coaching, because that's what's important if you're trying to get a high score. Right? And I can tell you that we've had a lot of people, literally thousands of people through our program. Our company has been around for about 20 years. But about 10 years ago, when I joined this company, I said, we got to do something different. We got to develop a program that's going to be nothing like what existed before. We got to really focus on teaching people how to think differently, because I'm not smarter than other people, but somehow I was able to get a very high score within a short time. So I knew how to think that way. And if that's something we can teach other people, then everybody can do really well on the GMAT with enough practice. Here's one example. Daria joined our class in April. She studied for about 3 months, and her diagnostic score was not very high. Most people are going to get really discouraged with that diagnostic score. 380 is like a bottom 8%, I think. And then she studied for 3 months, just following everything that we suggested. And at the end of the 3 months, she got a score of 700. Right? She told me, look, I knew that this is what I'm going to get, because on the practice test, she was getting very close to that program as well, right? So that's just, and notice how in her testimonial, she's actually saying, I learned how to manage time and stress and how to think, right? It wasn't about the formula. The formula I can learn from a book, or I can watch a YouTube video, but I really learned how to think differently. I learned the different process, and that's what helped me get a really high score. So she's now applying to one of the top schools where she really wanted to go to in Europe. So I wanted to share with you today a couple of strategies that we teach in our GMAT Mastery program, but most importantly, I want to give you a framework, because some of you may be able to join our program and some of you, for various reasons, might not be able to. So I want to show you how our students study to achieve these high scores. I'm going to give you the exact formula of how the structure looks like. I'm also going to talk about how do you actually measure your success on the GMAT, and how do you guarantee your success. In fact, I'm going to tell you what we talk to all of our students, that on the day of the test, you can do a gut check, or as you're approaching the test. And that gut check consists of two things. If you have these two things, if you feel like you have these two things, then you will do well on the test day, guaranteed, no exception. And if you don't have at least one of these two things, the test is probably not going to go well. So I'm going to share this with you as well. I'm going to give you some resources to study at home, just some of the things to think about. And we'll do one more hard question towards the end. And we'll go through this really quickly, probably in the next 20 or 30 minutes. So if you've studied for the GMAT already, you know that the GMAT consists of 4 sections: the essay, the integrated reasoning, the quant and the verbal sections. And of course, the quant and the verbal sections are the sections that contribute towards the 200 to 800 score. These sections consist of questions that are adaptive in nature. I'm going to show you in a moment what this means. And the quantitative reason section has 2 question types: problem solving, data sufficiency, and verbal reasoning questions, 3 question types: sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. These 2 sections are adaptive. What this means is that the questions are going to change in difficulty based on how well you do. If you're answering a question correctly, the next question is going to be harder. If you're answering the question incorrectly, the next question is going to be easier. So the GMAT essentially then uses a secret formula to calculate your score. You wouldn't see your score in real time, but the GMAT keeps track of the questions that you do and keeps serving you easier or harder questions. This also means that if you want to do well, you are going to see a lot of hard questions on the GMAT. That comes with the package. The only way to do well on the GMAT is to see a lot of hard questions. I know that's perhaps not how I wanted to see questions in my university or college. I wanted easy questions on the exam, because then I can get an easy A. On the GMAT, it's not going to work that way. The only way to do well is to see very hard questions. And of course, we don't get more time for these hard questions. So time management becomes really, really important. So the GMAT does use a secret formula to calculate your score. It's actually not very secret. This is a formula. This is the real formula that was shared with me at the GMAT conference. There's a special conference that's invitation only, where there's about 15 or 20 people from all over Northern and South America whom the GMAT knows do a really good job training people for the GMAT. So the GMAT then invites us to the headquarters of the GMAT and shares with us a lot of really interesting things. And I know many people are asking me, do they share the real questions? And the answer is no. But they do share a lot of the things, including the formula of how the scores are calculated. So there's a formula. And I know that's probably not as useful to us, but here are some of the things that are important. Some of the questions on the GMAT are experimental, which means they don't count towards that algorithm. So there's a chance that if you work on a question and you really, really want to get it done and you spent already 10 minutes on it, that could have been an experimental question. So don't spend 10 minutes on questions. You may have also heard that the first 10 questions are more important. That's also not true. These questions don't weigh any less or any more when it comes to the calculation. There is, however, a huge penalty for not finishing the exam on time. That's why if you're approaching the end of the test and you didn't manage your time well, hopefully you won't be in that situation, you actually learned how to do it. But if you didn't manage your time well, then the best thing to do is to blindly guess and move on and finish your test on time. I know I was doing one of these workshops and one of the students told me, oh, if I only knew that one tip, I would have gotten probably above my target score, but I was 30 points below. So remember that tip, always finish on time. Now, you might be wondering, can I take my test actually right now? Because we are in the middle of global pandemic. So is it possible for me to actually go and take the GMAT? Well, it is possible. The GMAT is available both in an in-person format and the online format. Now, there are some parts of the country or some parts of the world where the test centers are not open. There are some parts of the world, some parts of the country, some states when they are open, So please do check whether the test center next to you is open. However, the GMAT is now also available online. So far, it's until the end of the year, but chances are it is going to be extended. And it is a slightly cheaper exam. You can take it twice at home, and you can take it up to 8 times in a test center. Right? So essentially, the at-home exam is pretty much the same. It just does not include the essay. But otherwise, it's almost the same. And you could, if you'd like, take this test at any time. In fact, it's available 24/7. So you can literally sign up. You just have to sign up one day in advance. Tomorrow at 3 a.m. in the morning, if you are a night owl, you can take this test. If you are ready, of course. Now, in terms of the scores, you may have heard that the GMAT uses a bell curve. This means that there's a mean score of about 560, and the higher the score, the harder it is to get that score. For example, the score of 700 is the 88th percentile. I'm sure you know what the percentile means, so I like in our GMAT class sometimes to play a little game with my students. I ask them what percent of people get scores of 700 or more in the GMAT. And of course, I just told them that it's 88th percentile, so most people answer 88%. And I use this to demonstrate how it's so easy to get tricked on the GMAT, because I didn't tell you percent of what people. You know, it's 88% of people who take the test that year, but what if I said let's talk about the percent of people who study for the GMAT? There would be a different number, right? So it's important when you talk about percentages to know what's your base. And how many people actually begin studying for the GMAT? The numbers are staggering. I couldn't believe these numbers. They were also shared with us at the GMAT conference. Approximately 7 million people a year think about going into a business school, either a master's or an MBA program. About 2 million people of them actually begin studying for the GMAT. Right? So they either buy a book or they download some resources or they register on MBA.com. 2 million people. Of them, only 1 in 10 will do the test, and then 12% will get a score of 700. So if you think about the number of people who think about doing the GMAT versus the number of people who get a score of 700, that's 1 in 300. I think that's really, it was a shocking statistics to me. Like, you're telling me it's 1 in 300 chance of getting a score of 700? Like, yes. So how can we improve our chances? Well, let's understand what not to do and what we can do. So what not to do? Well, how do most people study? Here's what most people do. They go into a bookstore and say, an exam. I gotta prepare. What's the best book? And the reason why we do this is because we've learned that in our college, university, and high school, if we want to pass an exam, we gotta read a book. And we gotta review what's in a book. In fact, many GMAT companies that train people for the GMAT and some of the other exams have the word review in the name, the something review, right? And the assumption there is we're reviewing something we already know. But I think you already know by now that most of the things that are tested on the GMAT, the theory is something we know, but the kinds of skills, the kinds of approaches, the kinds of strategies is something most of the people have never learned. So it's not a review, it's we have to learn. But we go into a bookstore, we buy a book, maybe these books, or maybe these books, or maybe the latest and greatest. This was a book that was actually written by one of our instructors who was named the #1 instructor in the world. And when I speak with people, especially in person, I ask them, how many GMAT books do you have? Sometimes they're just laughing, and some people are saying, well, 10, 12, 30. I asked all my friends for GMAT books. I have like 2020. Yeah, exactly. 2019, 2018, 2017. And, I've had these books for like a while, and I have the same bookshelf as you would find on Amazon or in Barnes & Noble. And I'm saying, and what have you done with this book? Well, once in a while, I'll look at them. And that goes back to that same concept, is knowledge really power? Even if I read the book and I gain all the knowledge, does that mean I'm going to be powerful? And that's unfortunately, again, that the way our school system is designed, and in some of the other countries, it's designed a little bit differently. But here in America, our school system was designed to provide mass education. And some of us were lucky that we got into a school where we had some really amazing teachers, and some of them didn't. But it doesn't really matter. We can learn these skills. It's never too late to learn these skills. And I just want to give you a quote. Hopefully it's going to make you feel a little better. This is a quote from Andrew Carnegie. I'm sure you've heard about him. It was a multimillionaire in the early 20th century who said that millions of people go to school. The school teaches them the abstract knowledge, but doesn't teach them what to do with this knowledge. That's why I really love when Nemas was talking about really a very practical approach at Hult. It's learning by doing. This is really what the GMAT's about. If you come to our class, you're not listening to a lecture, you're doing a lot of things. And by the time you're done with our class, you will have done probably at least 1,000 questions in class and for homework. And that's how you really get that mastery. Right? And honestly, if you talk about the GMAT books as well, is most of them focus on reviewing the theory. The majority of them are written by test prep companies who want you to get the book and then realize the book's not enough and come to a class that usually costs about 100 times more than the book. The books also usually teach you the way to do a question that's the easiest to explain, but not always the most efficient. And they're essentially a really good supplement. You absolutely, in our class, we use the books. We use 2 books, the official guide, as well as the book that we publish, as well as we use a lot of online resources, because ultimately the test is going to be online. So everything is important. The books are important. They're just a part of the preparation. And they also don't give us feedback, which is also important. So how do we really master that skill? Well, I want to give you another analogy. And the analogy is that if I want to develop a skill, let's say a skill of driving a car, well, I got to get into a car, right? But I usually don't get into a car right away. If I want to get in behind the Formula 1 car and drive on a racetrack, I first have to learn some rules. Then I got to be in a car with someone because it's $1 million car. I don't want to crash it. And then I want to be in a car by myself. Right? So there are actually 3 steps to mastering this process. And that's the exact same process you will be following when you're preparing for the GMAT. In fact, if you take our program, we will guide you and we'll make sure you take these 3 steps, because that's how our program is structured. So the first step is you got to learn some rules. So how do you do that? Well, reading a book is helpful. Doing some online exercises is really helpful. When you come to our class, we give you access to a mini course, which gives you thousands of adaptive exercises. So essentially, you're going to be just working on these mini questions just to make sure you can use the skills from school. For example, you can take a fraction, convert it into a decimal. Like, you know that 1/8 is 0.125, right? These are the kinds of exercise you're going to be doing before you even come to the class. That's the basics. These are the rules. And we include that in our program, by the way. I know some of the other companies charge extra for that. The second step is you got to get into a car. But when we got into a car, we didn't get there ourselves because it was dangerous if we don't know how to drive. Even though we read a book about driving, the first time we do it, we probably wouldn't be successful. And that's actually one of the reasons why a lot of people give up on the GMAT, because they didn't really get that feedback, that support, and that guidance up front. And they also, most importantly, maybe didn't necessarily use the best strategies up front. Because if I look at a question and maybe I look at the explanation from the official guide, which are terrible. I'm sure that some of you have probably read explanations in the official guide. Some of them take like 2 pages. I don't know how everybody is expected to do that on the test day, because we're not. We're not expected to do what the official guide says. We really need to use these strategies. And as we are learning the strategies and we're practicing them, we are becoming more and more comfortable with them. And of course, at first, we're not super comfortable. That's why it's important to get feedback, because we will be making mistakes. But eventually, by doing a lot of these practice exercises and repeating these good strategies, applying them to multiple different questions, we are going to get better and better and better and better and better. So you should be seeing a consistent progress if you are learning from your experience and getting some feedback so you can learn a little faster or a lot faster. Because the idea is that by the time you come to the real test, you are going to feel very confident that you can do it. You may have heard the phrase, practice makes perfect. That's actually not true. Practice makes permanent. What this means is if we practice something, we're going to get really good at that thing. If we practice good habits, good skills, we're going to get really good at them. If we practice bad habits, that's why sometimes you see people driving on the road and you're thinking, what kind of school did they go to, right? And then if you just keep practicing what they've learned in the school and they never get better, because practice makes perfect, permanent, not necessarily perfect. So that's why when you come to our class, we're going to give you lots of practice. And then usually after you finish our class, most people continue doing some practice for about a month or 2, sometimes a couple of weeks. And we give lots of coaching at that time, even to the degree that everybody who comes to our class gets 3 hours of private tutoring. So over that few weeks after the course, we can give you so much coaching that on the day of the test, you are actually going to have these 2 things that are going to tell you whether you're ready. And the 2 things, by the way, you may want to write this down. This is really important. The thing number 1 you got to have on the test day is good habits. And I'm not just saying strategies, because the strategies we can forget. The habits become second nature. If our habit is to read the question first in critical reasoning, that's a habit. It's so much more efficient to read the question first, right? But it has to become a habit. Our habit is to look for certain keywords. Our habit is to do the question a certain specific way. That's a habit. And the reason why I'm really emphasizing this word is that the stress of the test day usually makes us forget what we've learned. But we don't forget our habits, because when people are stressed out, they go back to what they're most comfortable with. They go back to their habits, right? That's why some people, when they're stressed out, you've heard they go back to their bad habits. The same thing works with the good habits. That's why it's really important for us to develop these good habits. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we need to be confident using these habits. So if you have these good habits and you have confidence, if you have your gut check tells you that you have 2 of these things, your test day is going to be spectacular. If at least 1 is missing, you don't have the habits, maybe intellectually you understand things, or you're just not confident using them, the GMAT is going to find a way to get to you. That's why it's really, really important. That's why we provide lots of coaching after the class. So these are the 3 steps. And I hope if there's maybe just one thing you take away from this class, then this is going to be these 3 things. It's the rules, then getting into a car, hopefully with somebody who knows what he or she is doing, can teach you. That's why our instructors all have scored in the top 1%, because you may have heard the analogy that learning works like a rope. A teacher can pull you up, but it cannot push you above him or herself, right? So gotta make sure the people you learn from are real experts. And that's why our average instructor has at least 10 years of experience. So if you do want to come and study with us, we have a very, very skills-based, very applied program. It takes about 6 weeks. You can also take it over 12 weeks if you have a little bit more time. So you either take 1 class a week or 2 classes a week. We offer classes in pretty much every major city in North America, but not now. Right now, everything's online. It is very interactive. So right now, we can't really interact so much because you can see me, but unfortunately, I cannot see you. In a real test, we can talk in real time. So I can see you as much as you can see me. Right? You can ask any questions, and the classes are fairly small, just 10 to 15 people. It's not a chat box. We actually interact in real time. We have a high definition camera in our classroom. You see in a whiteboard, you see in the presentation, and the instructor is teaching you in real time. And like I said, our instructors usually have 10, 15, 20 years of experience. There are lots of support available. For example, we'll let you retake our course for free for 1 year. We give you 3 hours of private tutoring for free. There are office hours every week. And most importantly, there's coaching until you're done. If it takes you a month, if it takes you 3 months, doesn't really matter. As long as it takes you to get that score, as long as you continue studying, we're going to be there with you. There are 2 formats for our program. You can either take it on evening or on weekend. There are some savings. If you go to admitmaster.com, you actually will see what you can save. You can save a couple $100 on the cost of the program. It's already a really, really good value, but you can save some extra on that program, just as our thanks for coming to this workshop today. You can also take our program in an on-demand format, or you see a few options. You can either be in a live class or you can study on your own if you can't come to a live class. Because we offer 2 different options, mornings and evenings, we often have people from really all over the world because at least one or the other is going to work. For South America, then either one should probably work. Well, we've done a lot of research, and we have a lot of testimonials from our website. If you go on Google, you will see literally hundreds of testimonials. And our students also did the research. They went out and said this was the best value program. Because 50 class hours, if you look at how much does it cost at other companies, it's about $50 an hour when you come to the class. So if you divide one by another, on average, it's about $50. So that's, you're getting about $2,500 worth of classes. You get an online platform that's very comprehensive, 3 hours of private tutoring. Of course, all the GMAT books are included, and we even give you the MBA resume review for free. So if you were to add all of this up, that's about a $4,000 course, where the regular price of that course, we made it really, really easy for people to join that course. It's only $13.99, and it includes all of that thing. And it's a flat fee, and like I said, it's unlimited coaching. And for you, because you came to this workshop, if you join our class that's at the end of November, it's just going to be $11.99. So $1,199 US dollars. If you are located in Canada, that's $14.99 Canadian. And you might want to be thinking, well, what's my return on investment? And I think we already talked until now that the GMAT can really prepare you for the success in the business school, but can we actually get some more immediate return? And the answer is the average scholarship that our students get is $15,000. That's the average across all of the students. If you take our students that score 700 or above, the average scholarship is $30,000. So there's benefit to studying. And in fact, sometimes our students would even bring us a conditional offer from the business school. Some schools do that. That would say, if you were to score this score, we are going to give you this much scholarship, right? So to them, it's like, this is a no-brainer. I was just told I'm going to get a $15,000 and $20,000 scholarship. If I invest $1,200 and I can get $20,000 in scholarship, well, that's way better than the stock market, even if you invested in Tesla in March and you sold it now. And then that's an investment, of course, in yourself. And of course, like I mentioned, we do guarantee that we are going to work with you. This is the best guarantee, because until you get that score, we're going to work with you. And of course, we want you to get that score as soon as possible, because we want you to move on with your life, and we want ourselves to move on and help other students as well. So we'll make sure that you study very efficiently and you get that score as quickly as possible. For some of you, it might be 6 weeks. For some of you, it might be 12 weeks. For some of you, it might be 6 months. It really depends. It depends on a lot of factors. We're going to do an analysis upfront and understand where you're starting from. So if you go on that website, admitmastery.com/offer, you're going to see what's available right now. There are offers now that are available until midnight. If you are watching recording of this seminar, then just go there now and see what offers are available. And we usually have some offers on our live programs and some special offers on our self-prep programs as well. We do offer also a very affordable self-prep option that doesn't include any coaching. And there's a 30% off. And if you take it for 3 months, that's like even less than $300. So that's also something that can help you prepare very efficiently if your budget doesn't allow you to come to a program with the instructor. But ultimately, it all comes down to return on investment. Usually, the coaching from the instructor will get you a higher score. So somebody was asking what books does our program use? Like I've already mentioned, we do use the latest version of the official guide as well as the book that we ourselves publish. That's the book that contains strategies and very advanced GMAT questions. So it contains close to 500 very high-level GMAT questions. These are the questions we do in class. Our program is really designed to teach some of the more advanced, much deeper, much more comprehensive thinking strategies. Most people who even come to our class, we sometimes get people who come to our class after having scored already 700. I remember there was a student in our class who was sitting in the first class, very first math class, and he's already scored 50. He's already scored 50 on his quant score, and the maximum is 51. So I remember when I showed the class one of the strategies, he put up his hand and said, I just want to tell you guys, I've been studying for at least 6 months. I already scored 50, but this one strategy, that's already worth the price of the entire course. He said, well, this is amazing. I've never seen that. And that was the first quant class. And he ended up scoring 51 and 760. So in terms of the book of 2016, again, the book itself isn't really important. What's important is how you study. The questions don't really change in the GMAT question bank so much. So if you could use 2016, well, by all means, just make sure that this is a part of your study where you're learning the strategies and using the book to practice. So we don't use the book as a textbook. For us, it's a question bank. In fact, we encourage our students to not ever look at the explanations because we teach them strategies that are much better than the explanations in the official guide. In fact, I want to show you just before we wrap up, and I'm almost done, but just one thing I wanted to show you, and I'll show my contact information and we'll wrap up and we'll answer questions. Also, if you have any questions, just throw them in a Q&A box. Both Nemas and I are going to be happy to answer. But I want to show you one question. This is a question that used to be in the official guide 2020. It has been removed from 2020. Yeah, coaching is available to all schedules. Yeah, absolutely. We have instructors who work for us full time. So if you need coaching in the morning or in the evening, in the afternoon, not in the middle of the night, all our coaches are located in North America. Most of them are in the Eastern or Central zone. But yes, it's available whenever you are available. The classes are either morning on weekends or evenings on weeknights. So let me show you the strategy that we actually teach in our class. This is also a strategy we teach in our very first class. So imagine what's coming over 6 weeks if this is what we teach in the first class. So this is a question. Let me give you just 30 seconds to read this question just so we're on the same page. And I'll show you exactly how we teach that question in class. Okay, well, at this point, when I do this class in a live class, most of the people start reading the question for the third time. And then I would usually say, well, look, let me show you the answer choices. This is a multiple choice exam. So maybe once you see the answer choices, everything's going to be really clear. So let me show you the answer choices. At this point, I usually hear a gasp. People are like, are you kidding me? Like this, I'm supposed to do this question. By the way, how much time do I have for this question? I usually say, well, you have a minute. And people are like, there's no way I can do this question. Usually my engineering friends are going to start writing formulas. In fact, let me show you how my engineering friends are usually doing this question. So let's understand what this question is asking just for a moment. So essentially this person probably works from home, decides to go for a walk, actually for a run. So he runs at a certain speed, X miles an hour, and then he gets tired probably, turns around and walks back home at a different speed, Y miles an hour. He was away the total of T hours, and the question was, how many miles did he go for? Well, if we had numbers, that would be maybe a little bit easier, but the problem is that we have the total time he was away. We don't actually know how long he was running at one speed, how long he was running at a different speed. So it's a little hard to use the formula, but most people, of course, learn the formula. The distance is equal to rate times time. And then they're going to just start saying, and that's what I see my engineering friends usually do. They just say, okay, the distance from home at X times T, and the distance back home is Y times T2. So imagine that's a time back. And then the times together are T, and the distances are the same. So X times T1 has to be equal to Y times T2. We don't want to have too many variables, so we start substituting things. And then usually at this point, most people just give up, and the engineering friends are still trying to work out the formula, right? So let's say after 5 minutes, most people just got lost and give up on that question. That's what usually happens. And by the way, this question is classified as a hard question. So let me show you a different way of doing this question. Let's call it the mastery way of doing this question. That focuses on a lot more on the conceptual understanding of a problem as opposed to simply formulas. So what do we understand conceptually? Well, we understand that distance is equal to rate times time. So if we want to calculate the distance, we need to multiply the speed by time. So if I'm driving, let's say, from Boston to New York, and let's say I'm driving at 60 miles an hour, and it takes me, say, 5 hours. Well, I know the distance is 300 miles. I don't even have to think about the formula. It just makes sense, right? So if somebody comes and says, well, you know, why are you multiplying this? Why are you taking 5 hours times 60? Why wouldn't you add them? Why wouldn't you just say the distance is 65? We're going to say, well, you're out of your mind. That's not what we do, right? Yet when we start doing the GMAT, we start forgetting some of the more basic things. Because look at the answer choices. X and Y are speeds, but T is time. Would it be okay, like the answer choice B says, to add the speed and the time? Of course not. How about D? X plus Y plus T. Well, we can't add speed to time. How about E? Y plus T can't add speed to time, right? We have to multiply speed by time. We cannot add them. So A, B, D, and E are out. Now we're down to 2 answer choices. And just like we've done with the first question, one of them is right, one of them is wrong. So we just have to look at one of them. There are only 2 left. And of course, in the interest of time, I want to look at the one that's easier, and that's A. So A gives us X divided by Y times T. Well, if you're familiar with dimensional analysis, you understand the answer is going to be in the hours. And if you're not, you also figure, well, wait, when I divide one speed by another speed, the speeds are going to cancel out. It's not that I get another speed that way. I'm going to get nothing. I'm going to get some sort of a ratio. And then I multiply this by the hours, I get the hours. But I need the distance. So A is wrong. C has to be right. We got that question right. And literally, we've done it in 30 seconds. Moreover, notice how much math have we done? 0. And because we've done so little math, what's the chance of us of making a computational error? What's the chance of us of getting distracted, go down the wrong path, and waste a lot of time? Pretty much 0. We used our reasoning skills, not necessarily the formulas. We understood the formula, but then we reasoned through the problem. And that's why this type of a question is from the quantitative reasoning section on the GMAT. It's not just called the math section, it's called the quantitative reasoning section. So when you're thinking about how I'm going to prepare, please do know that the results you're getting do really depend on how you prepare. People who do well in the GMAT are not people who are smarter than others, not people who necessarily have the different backgrounds. I've had people who were athletes, professional musicians who came through our program, who got scores in the 760 range, and they all admitted they don't remember anything from high school. They had to relearn some of the basic concepts using some of the resources we provided, but they haven't really had to go back and become a math expert or math guru. It's really all about developing the skills. We do keep track of the success of our students in our program. Like I mentioned, our company has now been around for 22 years, and we've been keeping track of these results for the last 10, ever since we started teaching this GMAT Mastery skills-based program. And here's what we find. The average scores of our students are 670. Most people improve close to 200 points. And about a third of our graduates will score 700 or more. And I honestly would love for more people to score 700 or more, but not everybody needs 700. If you would like to get a 700, I would really love for you to join us, because we will help you get there, and that will help us improve our average. Now, people usually ask me, well, that's great. The average is 670. Well, what score will I get? And how long will it take me? Well, let me show you just a quick example. Here's Fionn. She came to our class in September last year. And she said, you know, I'd like to get a 650 by end of the year. And her diagnostic score was not high. It was like, I think, around 400. And I said, okay, no problem. Here's your study plan. Here's what you need to do. She came to classes. She did all the homework. We were coaching her throughout the process. So she calls me in the summer, just like 8 months later, and says, Sergey, I just walked out of the test center and I got a score of 760. What do you think I could do with this amazing score? I said, wow, Fionn, you wanted 650 by the end of the year. And she said, well, you know what? I figured the higher score to me is more important. I have the time. I can study a little bit here and there. She has 4 jobs. She's a nurse. She works in the ER, and she has 3 other jobs. So she's like, I can do 4 or 5 hours a week. So I couldn't really do this by end of the year, but I figured if I can get a score of 760, a lot of the doors are going to open to me. And if I can either go to a school that I really, really want to go to, or I can get a scholarship, or hopefully both. Right? So if you want a score of 760, you can get it. You just have to be really committed. And that's what our program is famous for. Is we don't even accept everybody in our program. When you want to join our program, you go on our website, you book a consultation, we're going to talk and we'll see if this is the right fit. Because the reputation for us is really important. So we want to make sure you're really committed, because as soon as you commit to our program, we will be really committed to you. So if you say, I want 760, that's it. We're going to keep working until you get 760. Right? It's going to be training to get to that level. Some people do this really quickly. Like this gentleman, she came to our program in January this year and said, I don't have time. I have 2 months. That's it. I'm starting a new job. I'm moving to another state. I just got to do this now. If I don't do it in 2 months, I won't have time afterwards. He started from 570, and as soon as the course was over, he took the test. He figured if he doesn't do well on that first test, he's going to do another test 16 days later. That's how long you have to wait. But his first attempt was 760. He was just ecstatic. He got into his dream MBA program, and he's just, this is it. I'm so happy that I took this program, because I didn't really have a lot of time to waste. I knew that I gotta really use some of the best advice. I gotta get the coaching because I don't have a lot of time. So either you have a lot of time and you want a really high score, or you don't have a lot of time, but you're really, really committed. You can get that score if you are actually really committed. And that's an important, going to be an important ingredient towards getting those habits and that strategy and that confidence on a test day that's going to help you get a score of 760. So where do we go from here, ladies and gentlemen? Well, if you'd like to join us, our next 2 classes that start before the end of the year, the evening classes start in 5 days, and the weekend classes start in about 2.5 weeks. And you can still save, essentially get an early bird discount, even though it's not available on our website anymore, if you go to that admitmaster.com/offer. If you'd like to dig a little deeper into the math, and if you'd like to spend 2 hours with us, just learning all kinds of math strategies, then come and join us on November 17th, which is going to be 12 days from now. You can go on our website and register at admitmaster.com. And we also have another special website where you can take a practice test, and that's TryGMAT, T-R-Y, so just like TryGMAT.com. If you go to that website, you can actually do a completely free practice test, and you could see what your score is going to be like. The test is going to come with the explanation. So whether you've already been studying or you're just starting, you can use that software completely free. There's one test, and there's some additional tests you can purchase that are very affordable. So all of this is on admitmaster.com/offer. Happy to connect one-on-one if you would like. I will post my personal email in the chat box right now. So if you would like to get in touch with me, please send me an email and I'll be happy to connect. You can send me your score reports. You can send me your resume if you would like. I'm happy to give you some personal advice and answer any of your questions. If you have any questions right now, either for myself or for Nemas, then please put your questions in the Q&A box. I see that we had already some questions that Nemas has answered, which is great. If you have any other questions, let us know. We can stick around probably for another couple of minutes or so. And if not, then we'll hopefully see you very shortly.
Yeah, Sergey, I haven't answered those questions. I'd actually asked folks to wait until the end. And so we can answer those questions right now. I see some of the questions in the Q&A there. And I'll just go through each question and then I'll answer those because I imagine some folks have stayed on to hear the answer to those. So the first question here is it's for Hult, is you're asking if the tuition fee is the same at all campuses. So the tuition fee does differ by campus. We do lock it in to try and make it the same at all the different campuses. But of course, because of exchange rate, it does fluctuate. So it's slightly different at each of the different campuses. And you can actually find the tuition fees and the cost of attendance estimate on our website. But it is different at the different campuses. And then the next question is, how many consulting firms hire students from Hult and what types of roles? So most of our students go into management consulting roles and also auditing consulting roles. And a lot of our students get hired by the big four, so KPMG, PwC, some consulting companies that come to mind. About 10% of our MBA graduates, so I don't have a number figure for you, but about 10% of our MBA graduates will end up working at a consulting firm post-graduation. And then what percentage of our students go into a totally different career or a field that other than what they've previously worked in? So this is an interesting one. So about 90% of our students will change either geography, location, function, or industry. So function, role, or industry. So we measure it as those three things. So 90% of our students will do one of those three things. And I would say probably about 60% of our students pivot away. So they change industry to answer that question. And then the last one here is the rotational program still available during the pandemic? How has that impacted the experience students have? So the rotation program still exists. And of course, we are going to default to the health authorities, the governing authorities in the cities where we are located, where we have campuses. So if it's safe for our students to travel to a different campus, that is going to be permissible. If we are open and running our campuses and that is permissible by those authorities, obviously you'll be able to rotate. We have a limitless learning approach where we're basically making sure that your education and your experience at Hult is not disrupted, to the point where you don't get to experience the full experience of being a Hult student, which rotation is a big part of that. So with limitless learning, we're making sure that we limit how much you are disrupted throughout your academic journey. All right, and those are the questions in our Q&A. I'm going to look at the chat box, Sergey, if we have any other questions there. There's one for you here, Sergey. It is from Tanya, and she's asking, what books does your program use? Is it okay to use books from 2016 for studying? Or is it important to get the latest version?
So I believe I've already answered that question. It's okay. The books are still okay, again, as long as you use the books for as a question bank and not necessarily as the guide, because the books are not actually providing any guidance on how to study. And the books don't really provide strategies, certainly not the official guide. But in terms of a question bank, it's perfectly okay to use 2016. If you take our program, we will provide the 2021 edition. Okay,
Right.
let me answer the
So yeah,
next question, and then I think there's some questions for you, Nemas, as well.
Yeah, but I think there's another question for you is how do you raise a test score
Yeah,
of
yeah, let me
300?
answer that question. How do you raise a test score of 300 through your GMAT study program? Can the score be raised more than 100 points with your study prep program? So on average, our students raise about 200 points. And so that's an average, right? Some people score more. Some people score 400 points. We've had students who came with the scores in the 200s and ended up in the high 600s. So it's, see, the thing is that we teach you the skills to get these high scores. And we essentially, we train you how to get these to these high scores. So there is no magic. It all comes from teaching you a much, first of all, strategy on a much deeper level. So when we show you the strategies in class, we don't just show you the strategy, we actually explain to you exactly why this strategy has to work, so that you will have both the intellectual and emotional understanding about using this strategy. You actually feel very comfortable using this strategy because you know exactly why it works. And then we also focus on helping you develop the skill. So it's not just about, again, intellectual understanding of the strategy. That's going to come from practice. So what this means is that the instructor in a class is going to give you some questions to do. He's going to have a discussion with you. You're going to talk through these questions. He's going to talk you through the questions. You're going to come for some coaching where, again, we'll see how you are actually approaching the questions. A lot of it is going to be about the process. A lot of it is going to be about learning how to approach the questions logically. A lot of it, like I can tell you, for example, one of the most important skills on the GMAT is attention to detail. And in fact, the number one problem on the GMAT is not having enough attention to detail and misreading the question or the answer choices. So you might ask, well, how do you actually teach people attention to detail? Now, there's a way. First of all, we use a lot of the kind of psychological way of learning. Some of the exercises we do, we work with coaches to actually understand how the human brain works and what kind of exercise we can give you so that you can have a better grasp of these strategies. But secondly, when it comes to attention to detail, a big part of it is knowing what to look for. We all have a good attention to detail when we're looking for something that's important for us. Right? When we have a child, our child running around and we're doing something, and child's running around us, we have a really amazing attention to detail focusing on our child. The same thing when you're doing GMAT questions. Is there certain keywords, certain kinds of ways, certain patterns to look for? If you look for these patterns and you proactively, when you come to the class, we teach you, here's what to look for. And let's do a few questions where you're going to identify exactly that thing. By the time you come home and start doing questions, you already have a much better attention to detail because you know what detail to pay attention to, right? So it's actually something you can develop. So it's a part of the whole experience. And that's why there is no magic, but yes, there is magic, because once everything puts together, then this is when magic happens. So hopefully that answers your question. And I hope you have a chance to come and experience our program, and then you actually see how much everybody improves. And hopefully you can improve as well. Okay,
All right.
I
And
think there's some
the
questions.
next question I see is, what is the difference between the Boston and SF campus? So all of our campuses are Hult campuses, so there is no difference. So what attracts a candidate from one campus to another, it depends on a number of things. It could be as simple as wanting to experience that city. It could be specific to the network that you're trying to develop. So that is something that we actually work with you on, and we talk to you about what it is that you're trying to achieve with your experience at Hult. And you'll get an enrollment advisor who'll be assigned to you if you start the application process. And we'll do a deep dive into what campus might be better suited for you and what you're trying to achieve, whether it be for your career or just literally just on a personal level where you'd like to be living while you go through your MBA program or one of the master's programs that we offer at Hult. Okay. The next question is, one can just do the MBA study course without going to a school degree program, I imagine. I think, Luz, but yeah, I think what you're asking is, can somebody do the GMAT test prep without going to Hult? Of course, you can. These are, we are partners with GMAT Master, but they are a separate entity, and so you don't have to apply to Hult to be able to use Admit Master, and vice versa. You don't have to use Admit Master to apply to Hult. Okay. Are there any other questions?
I can just maybe just build an experience that I was sharing with our student who actually went to Dubai Hult campus. She was, at that time, she lived in Toronto in Canada, and she actually owned a company that was selling winter clothing. And she was telling me, she was a really, really interesting person, very passionate about her business. And she was saying, look, I'm sick of winter. I'd actually have to move somewhere warmer and maybe do something that's related to the fashion industry or related to the clothing industry. So she ended up going to Dubai. She actually got married in Dubai. She now lives in Dubai, and she went on to work for Louis Vuitton in marketing for the Middle East. So she told me that she originally wanted to do something else. In fact, she originally, if you don't mind me saying this, Neema, she originally wanted to go to Harvard, and then when she found out about the program in Dubai, she's like, I feel like this is really for me. I think this is really going to be good. And then she actually told me that this was the best decision of her life. Now, of course, everybody is personal. I mean, that's why when you connect with an admissions advisor, then they're going to help you understand what's the right fit for you. But for her, this was the best fit. She told me, and then she actually wrote about this when she was doing an interview for our article in the magazine. She was saying this was doing an MBA at Hult in Dubai. She said, well, that was the best decision of my life. So it changed my life. Now I have exactly what I want in life, and it wouldn't have happened unless I went to this specific campus, right? Yeah. And originally she wanted to be in Boston. So that's why, if you can take advantage, and why wouldn't you, of that service that Hult provides, absolutely please do, and connect with an advisor so that you can decide what's best for you, because you cannot do another MBA, you cannot do one more MBA, and so on. All right, Janetta was asking, study prep, how long do you have to retake course second time if you didn't mean GMAT score? Okay, so first of all, we, unlike some of the other test prep centers, we do not require that you give us a reason why you want to retake our course. I know at some of the other companies, you actually have to prove that you didn't improve your score, and only then you're gonna be allowed to come to a course. So we don't do that. Many people come and repeat our classes simply because they feel that they're not ready. This is something that's very, very new. The source of the skills that we're going to teach you are the skills that for most people, they're very new. They haven't seen them before. So sometimes it takes a second try. We do give you 12 months to come back to any of our classes. We offer a lot of classes, and now everything's online. So our classes usually start every 2 to 3 weeks. So usually within about 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, there's going to be another GMAT class that's going to be starting, another 6-week GMAT program. So you have 12 months to come to as many classes as you want. We're not going to limit you in any way. I mean, at some point, if you come to too many classes, we might just maybe offer you a little bit of coaching just so that you can finish your journey and get on with your life. But we're not going to mind, and there is no fee to come back to classes.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we will wrap it up over there. Thank you so much to everybody for making the time to attend this session this evening. As I mentioned when we started, we will be sending a recording of the session out, and everyone, please do stay safe out there, look after yourselves, and thank you for coming this evening.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nemas. And again, feel free to connect with us. I know some of you had a lot of questions about the GMAT. So if you'd like, I see Luz, I see Janetta. Please just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll include the link in the email you're going to get tomorrow. And I'm happy to chat and answer any of your questions.
That's perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Sergey. Everyone, have a good night. Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care.